I know we want to speak mostly about Abraham Kuyper and these stone lectures here, but there's also a great interest of mine, and I know for a number of people that listen to this podcast here on Geerhardus Vos.
Yeah.
And there's clearly a huge influence that you hear in Vos's, I guess, his inaugural address at the theological school in Grand Rapids, with the Kuyperian influence. His address, the prospects of American theology. Kind of a question is that, early on when Vos is teaching there, you do hear that Kuyperian influence, but it seems to be not as explicit as Vos's career goes on, though it's certainly there. Not to say that it disappeared or he changed his views, but any thoughts and maybe some explanations as to why, Vos is very explicitly, in a sense, Kuyperian, and then, it kind of dulls out in more explicit tones in his writings.
Yeah, well, indeed, I think you could call him a neo-Calvinist, and I count him to the neo-Calvinist tradition. Of course, you might also count him to the Presbyterian tradition, but I, from my point of view, count him to the neo-Calvinist tradition.
Sure, I do too.
And he was, of course, in close touch with both Abraham Kuyper and Herman Bavinck, especially in the 1890s and 1900s. But it seemed to have disappeared, but I don't think it did. So I'm writing a book on the Dutch, on the American connection of the Vrije Universiteit. And I found in archives all kinds of letters, also from the 1910s, when he advises Herman Bavinck about American students who come to Amsterdam to study. So he is still involved in that, and he's still in touch with especially with Herman Bavinck. And students from Calvin often went to Princeton to get an advice from Geerhardus Vos, either to study at Princeton or at the Vrije Universiteit, and several went to the Vrije Universiteit. I agree that in his later publications, he doesn't mention often the names of Bavinck and Kuyper anymore. But I think that also his biblical theology, which is one of the feats, let's say, of Vos's theology, has strongly been influenced by the stress on history in the Calvinist tradition. And if you compare him to books that have been written in the 1920s and 30s on, let's say, on the history of the covenant in Dutch, and you compare this with what Geerhardus Vos wrote, you see all kinds of similarities.
Well, that's very helpful. Thank you.
It is.